everyone. I'm Catherine Adams. So I'm delighted to welcome you to our 2020 Reuse Summit for the next 2 hours. So it's our inaugural Reuse Summit. We've got lots of people registered to attend. So hopefully it's a roaring success and we'll do more of these. So what we wanted to really base today on was some real sort of practical solutions, products and case studies for reuse. And what we've sort of used is this brand sharing layers concept. I'm sure lots of you have seen this diagram before. It's been around for quite a long time, but with circular economy, it's really sort of coming to the fore. So we're trying to show you presentations that sort of fit within this layering approach. So first of all, we have a quick poll question to start with. Why are you interested in reuse? And Richard, are you going to load the poll for us?
See you.
Hopefully. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
I'm muted.
So there you go. If everyone can do that, there's about 30 seconds to answer that. That would be really good. I think I can do it too, actually. And so the results should just come up in a minute.
Catherine, it seems some people are having issues logging on, so I'm just going to try and fix that in the background.
Okay, that's fine. Do we have the poll results?
It's just going out. I'll stop it now and share.
There we go. So why are you interested in reuse? The winner there is reducing carbon emissions. So that's great. Showing a link through to the whole net zero and embodied carbon agenda, and then reducing waste, meeting waste reduction targets, creating social value, community and benefits. So thanks for that. Really interesting to know those results. So just waiting for my screen to change now, which it doesn't appear to want to. All right, so thank you for our sponsors and partners. So we have Cleveland Steel Tubes as our main sponsor. Roy will be presenting in a minute, so you can hear all about what they're up to. We also have Elwarb and Netherlands, the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, also supporting us. And again, both of them are speaking, so thanks to them. So a quick whiz through the programme and speakers. We have, as I said, Elwarb and Holland Circular Hotspot talking, and then we have presentations directly related to each layer. So site is Roy looking at steel and steel tubes, structures, Peter looking at historic buildings. We have LEDX, which is looking at waterproofing materials. Then there's a 5-minute break, and then we're back again looking at circular lighting with Tom, and then 2 more sort of community social value type reuse initiatives from Steve and Richard. So webinar instructions, we encourage you to put your questions into the Q&A box, which you can find down the screen. You can also use an upvote on that. So if you really want a question to be asked, you can put a vote on that. We have got half an hour for Q&A. If you would like to ask your question verbally, we're happy to unmute you to do that. Please do not use the raise hand or chat options. Use the Q&A. However, if you do have a technical problem, write to Richard in the chat. Also, just to let you know that we are recording the webinar. So who are we? We're the Alliance for Sustainable Building Products. We're not-for-profit, mission-led, and really we're all about transformation to a healthy, low-carbon built environment through products. And we have these 6 pillars, which we try and sort of do our work around. We have over 70 members from all across the sector, and as you can see, all across the different supply chain, and some of them are sort of more into reuse, some of them are product suppliers, some of them are very much sort of into insulation, so quite a range. We've been busy in circular economy for quite a few years now, doing a number of projects, which you can see on the screen. looking at sort of designing demountable houses called Refab Project. And then we've also got our reusable building products network, which has met a few times. We've looked at structural reuse, and we have a climate kick project, which looked at business models for reuse as well. I'm going to whiz through these because I'm already a little bit over time. We have a number of upcoming events, so keep your eye out for them. We also have an awards at the moment. We're looking for entry to awards, so have a quick look on our website for that. Just a plug for our innovation pitch series. So this is focused on reducing plastics, part of our Reducing Plastics group. We have an event on the 17th of December where we have a number of pitchers and judges where they vote, and then the people can vote on which one they like best. We're looking for products who want to put themselves forward for the building services one in January, and then a grand final where all the winners can get together. Just a quick plug for our Interreg project that we just recently started. This is very much trying to look at circular economy from the problem of duvets, a lot of waste duvets. Not much you can do with a waste duvet, so we're trying to find routes for turning it into recycled fibre insulation. So we'll be doing lots of testing and prototypes there. So do get involved with us. We're a friendly bunch. You can join us as a member, sign up to our mailing list, become a sponsor, participate in one of our groups, or just attend lots of our brilliant webinars and events. And that is our contact details. So do feel free to contact any of us. So without further ado, oh, I've got a poll question actually. I forgot about this one.
I think we'll do that one at the end.
Okay, we'll do that one at the end. Right, fine. So the first presentation is from Rob Ooman. He's the special envoy for Holland Circular Hotspot. Unfortunately, he actually can't be here. He said he was going on a plane. I didn't think people did that anymore, but unfortunately he's been called to something. However, he has got a video which we're going to play now, which he's pre-recorded, and he's very happy for people to email him. So his email is on the video. So Richard, if you could upload the video, that would be great.
Catherine, if I can make a suggestion, I'm just trying to fix out that there's a few issues with people Zooming, joining. Could we ask Andrea to go next and then do the video, if that's okay?
Okay. Andrea, are you okay with that?
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
I'll just quickly get it.
So we have Andrea, who is from LWARB, London Waste Recycling Board. She's going to talk through the circuit project, which is a really exciting project happening now. So over to you.
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks. Hello, everyone. Just put my video on so you can say hi, and then I'm going to turn it off because of normal standard internet issues. It's really great to be here and to be a supporter of this event. So thank you for inviting me. So very quickly, first of all, just a little bit about the London Waste and Recycling Board and who we are. We're actually a partnership between the Mayor of London and the London boroughs, and our purpose is to help London transition to a low carbon circular economy. And we do this in a whole different variety of ways, from providing technical support and advice to the boroughs, conducting research activities, pilots and demonstrations, and providing business support services to innovative circular SMEs, among other things. And we have a range of focus areas, including plastics, food and textiles, and the built environment, which is the area that I focus on. And as Catherine mentioned, our current project in the built environment is called Circuit. It is a 4-year EU Horizon 2020 funded project. And the aim of this project is to accelerate the uptake of circular construction practices from being niche exemplar projects to techniques that are adopted citywide. It's a partnership between 4 different cities. So as well as London, we are working with Hamburg, the city of Copenhagen, and the city of Vantaa in the Helsinki region of Finland. These are all of our project partners here. LWARB is leading the London cluster, and working with us in London are Imperial College, Grimsby Architects, Clear Village, the Greater London Authority, the UK Green Building Council, and the BRE. And this is what we are trying to do through the project. So it was interesting to see the results from the first poll and reducing carbon emissions being the main reason why people are interested in reuse. So our core targets for the circuit project are to reduce virgin material use by 20% and have cost savings of 15%, as well as to calculate the associated reductions in carbon emissions and waste generation. My poll slides are missing, I think. So apologies for that. Just give me 1 second. Not quite sure where they've gone. No, they're not. They're coming up next. Just needs to be more patient. So these are the 3 areas of circular construction that we are focusing on for.
We can't see your screen now, Andrea.
Okay, hang on. Best laid plans, you know.
That's okay.
You wouldn't know I've done this 2 times already today. Right, back. You're back with me?
Yes, we can see your screen again.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Sorry, everyone. So the 3 areas of circular construction we are focusing on for circuit are urban mining, which is the one most relevant to today, which is the reuse and high value recycling of demolition materials, the transformation of the existing environment to meet our current needs and therefore avoiding demolition needing to take place altogether, and lastly looking at flexible and adaptable design techniques to make the first 2 areas easier in the future. So another poll question, we just keep the momentum going. We'd like your opinion on what you think the biggest barrier is to the greater reuse of materials. Give me a range of different options. Got increased cost, legislative requirements around waste. Is it to do with transportation and storage and the impacts on program that might have? The lack of trust in quality of the reclaimed materials or lack of standards, or is it a health and safety issue? Really interested to hear your thoughts. I'm going to give it a few minutes to allow people to vote, and I think the results will come up on screen once I've had a good number of votes. I think you're actually allowed to check more than once, so please don't check them all though, or else that won't make much sense. Results in?
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so the winner is lack of standards for reused materials, and that's actually by quite a significant way. So that's really interesting. So we can take that back to the rest of our project and see if there's something we can address. So I didn't mention, so it was a 4-year project. We've got 3 years left, so there's still plenty of time for us to get stuck into some of the detail of these things. So just looking at a little bit more detail on what we're going to be doing in the urban mining focus area. So there's 2 kind of core strands. We're looking both at the kind of, I hate using this word, dirty word, the waste side of the problem. So we're looking at the demolition process. What can we do as an intervention around there? The consortium has already developed an agreed pre-demolition audit template, and we're currently in the process of trialing that on a number of buildings across the 4 cities. And then the other activity that we're looking at is the challenges of incorporating reclaimed materials into new construction, so touching back on the standards issue that just came up. And our next activity that we're just about starting now is looking at understanding the recycling and reuse market in the 4 cities. Again, that will lead on to a number of demonstrators. Once we've done those demonstrators, we'll be taking all of the outputs of that to create policy recommendations, a digital marketplace, and also guidance related to these things. So touching on that again, so which of these elements do you think has the most potential to increase reuse? So these are all things that we could focus on throughout the remaining 3 years of our projects. There's an inventory, and the idea of this is maybe at a city scale inventory of what materials exist in the built environment. So maybe expanding the idea of a building as a material bank to a city as a material bank. An online materials exchange portal, better guidance or processes around pre-demolition audits, more storage locations, requirements in targets and contracts, whether that's requirements on the waste end of the story or on the reuse and new build end of the story, or is it quality standards and certification for reclaimed or reused materials? Really interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we go.
Stop it in 2 seconds.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so similar to what the biggest barrier is, the most desired output would be quality standards and certification for reclaimed materials. But in a fairly close second, there are requirements in contracts or tenders for a certain percentage reuse in new builds. So, well, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that insight with us. A few more slides. So just wanted to touch a little bit on our next activity, which is exploring the reuse and recycling market in more detail. We're going to be looking or trying to get a bit more detail on how much is actually being reused across the industry, because we don't think it's particularly well reported at the moment. Exploring what the established reuse markets are, and are there any emerging markets that could do with further support? What are the different organisations that are involved in this market and where are they located? And how could someone engage with this market? We know it's different from a kind of normal, a business as usual approach to either waste management or materials procurement. So we're trying to make it easier for people to engage with these more niche parts of the market. One final question. We'll do a quick one for this one. These 4 material streams, concrete, wood, steel and iron and bricks, are the largest proportion of segregated material waste that we find from construction and demolition activities. They're a small percentage because an alarmingly large percentage of construction waste is just mixed construction waste. But out of these 4, which do you think has the most potential for more reuse than what you would expect to currently happen? Nice and quick on this one. So the options are concrete, wood, steel or iron, and bricks. There is an other option if you think there's something really obvious missing, which would be interesting to hear in the chat function maybe. But those are the 4 obvious material streams we found from the waste data. Steel and iron, that's what's the most missed potential of. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And that's by quite a long way. Okie dokie.
1 minute, Andrea. Thank you.
I'm just wrapping up. So there's a number of ways you can get involved in the project if what I've been describing sounds interesting to you. We have a mailing list which we send out a quarterly newsletter to. So that just gives you some kind of project updates, some of the key things that we've been doing over the past 3 months. If you'd be interested in more regular communication from us, we have social media feeds on both Twitter and LinkedIn. So on those feeds, we publicise all of our blogs. We're doing quite a lot of interesting blogs from partners across all the consortium, so the 4 different cities, on a whole variety of different topics, averaging around 2 a month at the moment. It's the first place you'll find news of any publications that we do and guidance and stuff, as well as events and training as they happen. If you're interested in getting involved in the market survey information I just mentioned, again, please get in touch by email. We're really looking to find out all the innovative players in this market. My contact details are here, but I know that they will be shared afterwards. So thank you very much, Catherine. And thank you everyone for taking part in those polls. It was really interesting.
Thank you, Andrea. If anyone has got a question for Andrea directly, please use the Q&A function, and I'm sure Andrea can respond during the event. I think a few people are having issues joining, so if you are here now, great, and we apologise for that. Zoom isn't being very friendly to us at the moment. And for those that have joined, we did just mix up the agenda slightly, so we put Andrea on before Rob, but I think we're going to put Rob's video on now. So
Yep.
Rob unfortunately couldn't make it personally, but he's done a video and he's happy for people to email him. So his email details are attached. So Richard, if you could load that up, that would be great.
Will do. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, right. Hopefully you can hear it.
Hi there, my name is Rob Omen, and thank you for the invitation to speak here this afternoon. I'm from the Netherlands, and I work in a voluntary time for Holland Circular Hotspot, a special envoy. In my daily life, I work for a startup called Madester, active in the construction industry, with an IT platform to develop material passports for the built environment. I'll tell you more on that later. My main focus today here for you is to tell you more about what we do in the Netherlands in the field of circular economy, the role of Holland Circular Hotspot in this to promote circularity, and of course a special focus on what is happening in the built environment
Richard,
in
sorry,
the
it's
Netherlands.
Catherine here. Would we be able to
Apologies
turn
for
up the
not
video
being able-
turn up the sound slightly? Is that something you can do, Richard?
Yes, I'm just doing it now. Sorry,
Thank you.
it's a bit quiet.
Sorry, everyone. A few gremlins.
To be here live with you. I had 2 events to attend to at the same time, but very glad I'm able to speak to you through this channel. I have included my email address below, so if you'd like to get in touch or have any questions, please do so. Let's get into it. Holland Circular Hotspot. Today, of course, with the spotlight on the built environment. What we do, we connect companies, knowledge institutes and governments around the world to exchange and share knowledge on circular economy. And we position also the Netherlands as a global frontrunner in this, so that companies in Holland can create opportunities internationally as well. But most importantly, it's the sharing of knowledge between actors to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. We're grateful to see that the idea of having a national hotspot has picked up around Europe, and many countries have introduced similar organizations, or many individuals have done that, in order to promote the transition to a circular economy. And on a global scale, this is happening as well, just to name a few organizations. What else do? We also link the circular economy to other key environmental topics that are out there today, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the climate change agenda, which of course is has been out there for a while longer. But as you can see in the graph in the middle of this slide, that 45% of CO2 emissions come from actual production of products and materials. So transition to a circular economy where we have to produce less new materials will mean an immediate reduction in CO2 as well. So these agendas of circularity and climate change and SDGs are all linked to each other and benefit one another. And that's what we aim to make visible as well. Before getting into the construction industry specifically, I briefly want to focus with you on policy making as well, as oftentimes it is a key driver for change. And I believe it's always very important to take into account a bit of a historical perspective as well, to be able to make plans for how we want to form things in the future. Of course, it started in the 1870s with, from a public health perspective, collecting waste, and it's moved to an environmental focus, protecting more the environment in the 1970s, to actually recovering some value from waste, from what we recycle, and still though at a very low value. And right now we have moved to the point of circularity, where the aim is to begin with to prevent waste and to make sure we can maintain the prosperity we've built up over time. And in the Netherlands, this has resulted in the vision of Netherlands Circular in 2050. And this has resulted in turn in several policy agendas in several different topics, as you can read here in the slides, of which one is the construction sector, through which I would like to dive in now. And why is this built environment, the construction sector, so important? Because we use a lot of resources. The built environment is responsible for, by weight, for about half of the raw material usage in the world, half of total energy consumption, 1/3 of water consumption, also 1/3 of waste generation, and more in the EU, more than 1/3 of the CO2 emissions. So if in the virtual room you're in now, looking at each other, I think you can all see that in US as professionals in the construction industry can make a very big positive impact in this field. So where do you start? Well, of course it starts with design, especially when you talk about new buildings, designing differently, avoiding materials that what you don't need, you also don't need to mine, you don't need to use. Designing, well, what can you eliminate? But also avoid the use of toxic materials, because that will make reuse more difficult at the end of its life cycle. And thinking how can we design things differently that it can be easily disassembled and be reused in a better way. And of course, lastly, in what way can you replace certain very scarce and finite materials by renewable materials? Of course, without depleting the biological stock of that either. And once a building is built, it becomes key to maintain value for as long as possible. And of course, the highest value is when the building or the product can be continued to be used in its original use, so you don't have to adapt anything. And after that comes reuse. A door, can you reuse this door literally in another building? And if you cannot, you move to remanufacturing. Maybe you need to improve a few things on it and it can go back into use then. And lastly, you end up at recycling. Or if there's no other way, incineration or landfill, but of course that you want to avoid at all times. And with that, your business model is changing as well. Instead of selling a building or selling products one time, think about how you can maintain value for the real estate owner as long as possible, and what kind of innovative models you can develop around that. I'm going to go through some examples. This first one is a fully bio-based composite bridge developed by the Technical University of Eindhoven, having used flax and hemp fibers to make this bridge. And it's great because it's replacing some very resource intensive, such as concrete and steel materials that also have a big CO2 footprint, whereas this is actually a saver, or it locks in CO2. And great to see these developments happening. Madaster, this is the company that I work for. We have developed an IT platform to enable real estate owners and its service providers and construction companies, architects, to develop material passports and to develop an exact insight and overview of what products and materials are in your building, what the level of circularity is, and its financial value at the end of its life cycle. And we actually use the layers of brand. I saw it's a topic of conversation today here as well in the conference. We use the layers of brand as one of as a way to structure and to organize the material passport. If you'd like to know more, we're starting to explore activities in the UK as well. Happy to talk with you. Next one is Venlo City Hall. They applied from many years ago already cradle-to-cradle principles. So the way materials have been sourced here in the building is just great. Online you can look up more examples. But also they have looked at product as a service models. Instead of buying everything for certain elements of the building, they have also come across other concepts which really stimulated companies to come up with different business models. Park 2020 was the first cradle-to-cradle certified, or first cradle-to-cradle business park. And here you can find, I think, the largest collection of cradle-to-cradle materials around the world in one place. And they have really been a pioneer when it comes down to commercial real estate. Rao Architects developed the Leander office by leaving the very old remaining buildings intact, renovating them and putting a huge new roof over all these buildings all together. And in turn making sure that 80% of the old original materials have been reused in the current building. It has inspired many to do so as well. Circle, it's a pavilion developed by ABN AMRO Bank. Circular design in itself, but it serves as an inspiration space for circularity. So if you're ever in the Netherlands, make sure to visit the Circle Pavilion as well. And last one, which I think is amazing, it's called the Smart Crusher, which is able to separate the different elements of which concrete is made, so that the inactivated cement can be used again. And it has a great potential for a very large industry. And they are also already rolling out or exporting this product internationally. One of my favorites. I would like to conclude, as I am out of time, that here's a few notes, but that is the transition to circularity in the built environment is not theoretical anymore. It's happening, and if you're not going with it, you will. I believe you'll start to lag behind, and it's really becoming the new standard. It's happening around the world at different levels, and I hope you also see it as an opportunity instead of a cost to transition. It's an opportunity to build a more resilient model, a business model for your company and a model for our society as well. And lastly, we need all actors involved, a company, governments, research institutes as well. So when you are sitting here in this virtual room, please look around and see how you can better collaborate with these actors that often I think work in silos, because in between those silos, that's where the magic can happen to transition to a circular economy. That brings me to the end. 2 minutes over time. Apologies for that. I hope you've gained some valuable insights. Please connect with us through our social media channels. And if you would like to connect with me or to be connected with some of the companies and examples I mentioned to you, please get in touch. And I look forward to speaking with you further. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much for the invitation. And well, once again, I hope to be in touch in the future with you as well. Bye.
So that was Rob presenting, always doing great stuff in the Netherlands. It will be nice if we could have a presentation next year with some of those buildings similar to the UK in terms of circular construction. So if apologies, we're running about 10 minutes late. Apologies for that. We'll try and catch up sometime. So if I could ask Roy to share his screen, please. So Roy is going, he's on our site layer. He's going to be talking about steel reuse, and he's one of our patron members. So over to you, Roy. I can see your screen, so it's working.
Excellent, thank you very much. I'm not going to try and do this in Dutch, I don't think. That was very impressive. A lot of you guys in the audience, I suspect, have seen or heard from me before. Apologies for that. Cleveland Steel, we're a 40-year-old business that has been reusing steel pipe into construction for our entire trading history. In real terms, I think that's as much as I need to say about that. People can find us and ask more detailed questions very easily if they need to. I will switch my video off if I can figure out how. It's just gone again. Well, I'll proceed with it. Okay, so the headline on the top of that was just something I wanted to point out so people understand. For me, circular economy, reuse, ignoring international standards, etc., about carbon saving and carbon calculations, a lot of it is actually about preventing waste and redirecting waste, making correct use of or better use of. And to put that in context for steel, there is, just as we sit here now, a project in America for oil and gas line that has resulted in 375,000 tons of pipe that is no longer required. That's probably close to an entire mill's annual production. There's a 36,000 and a 60,000 ton parcel sitting within Europe. So I know a lot of us probably think of waste as being a single site construction or anything else that is deteriorating. It's really quite stunning when you find out the sheer scale. And this is stuff that's actually never been used. It just ended up, the oil prices dropped. People don't want it. Therefore, it's no longer required. It's cheaper to not use it than use it in a project that was no longer viable. Ourselves, we've got actually nearer 80,000 tons of pipe, but you just get an idea from this. This is all surplus material or second-hand material. It's material that no longer had a purpose for its original project. So what we do then is sell it into a new life, basically. Just to run through some of the old arguments on steel, if I may. Steel is brilliant. It's recycled 95% currently. So if people believe that by asking for steel with a high recycled content, they are somehow influencing the marketplace for steel, they are not. Steel is 95% recycled currently. You're going to make a very marginal difference, if any at all, if you manage to put pressure on the market to recycle the other 5%. Globally, steel is not able to meet global demand from recycled only product. So recycling isn't the way that we make steel better in the circular economy. Reuse is the way that we can do that. Steel is great from point of view of reuse because its properties don't deteriorate in the simplest sense. A piece of steel manufactured today, kept in the right conditions, will be just as good in 100 years' time. There are a few provisos that are important. You don't want steel that's radioactive. I would say that's fairly self-explanatory. Steel that has been subject to fire. Fire, heat, temperature will change the properties of steel for sure. And steel that's been subject to fatigue. Now that's a dynamic loading. Bridges would be the example. Buildings swaying in the wind typically is not. I'm not an engineer, but it's just something to have in mind. But you need an engineer to understand if the steel has been in a dynamic scenario or not. Crane rails is another bad one. Anyway, if you recycling steel saves 70% of the carbon from production versus new. Reuse saves a generally accepted 95, 96%. So reuse gives you that better option for a better outcome using steel. Oh, come on. Apologies, this has now decided it doesn't want to play anymore.
I think some of the slides are a bit slow loading, Roy.
I'm just going
to... we can't see the slide anymore.
No, I got rid of it to try and...
Okay.
basis I couldn't see any of them either, I thought it might be a good idea to.
Okay, we can see it now.
There we go. Sorry. So from the point of view of can we reuse, there is absolutely no legislative reason that we cannot. The construction product regulations actually specify sustainability, the Eurocodes and CE marking EN 1090 also allow for it. So there is no legal reason why steel can't be reused. What you have to do is prove that it's fit for purpose. The one real advantage for steel as a product is that you can sample it, test it, and prove all its properties. I think timber, from what I understand, is often subject to visual inspections and opinion. Steel, you can send a piece to a lab and get an absolute classified answer on all of its properties. Welds in steel can be retested, and it means that you can actually address one of the issues that came out in Andrew's presentation about confidence. People don't know enough about this, but you're just as able to demonstrate the new properties of steel and the reused properties of steel. You can produce almost matching test certificates if required. So you can get as much confidence as is necessary. You can test every piece, you can batch test. The key element for that is to specify the required properties. So what does your steel need to do to hold your building up or do whatever it's doing? When you know that, then you can test the steel you wish to reuse against those properties. You can decide from the provenance of the material you're going to use how many tests are required. You can test it and you can make sure it's going to do the job. We worked with the Steel Construction Institute the last couple of years, and there is now actually a guide, Structural Steel Reuse, which talks you through the whole process. So I'm not going to go into any more great detail than that. The Steel Construction Institute have a website. If anybody wants a copy of this book, I think I've still got 497 of the 500 copies we had printed, so you're very welcome to one of those. Just ping me a message. But it's all there, public domain information for people to see. This will talk you through how to reuse steel in your projects. The one key thing is traceability, making sure where you get it from. We offer 100% traceability. If it's your own job, you'll have to find your own route. Sometimes certificates exist, there may be markings, you may know where it's come from, so you know what it is. It may be as simple as you know it was good to do what it did before and you want it to repeat that duty in the future. That may be enough. I'll come to that in a little bit later in the presentation. Or you may have the old drawings, or in the future the BIM information may be available. So in terms of steel reuse, in our experience, it's tubular. These are all applications. This is all reused product, repurposed product. Some specific examples, just to go from one end of the scale to the other, to be honest. The top picture is a whole bunch of steel that came out of one of the film studios in London, and apparently had been various set supports for Marvel movies, spaceship cockpits and goodness knows what else. We weren't allowed to know what the name of the movie was, but I bought 60 odd tons of that material and have shifted up more than half of it already just into the farming market, to be honest. People buying it for gate posts, cattle crush, I don't know, all kinds of things, but it means that even the most basic material could be turned back round into a basic application. This job was a mega turbine in Scotland, neck end of 1,000 tons of pipe that went into the ground for a foundation, essentially. In this instance, and this is interesting because this is this year, it's just this last few weeks even. So a customer has asked us to take back the material that was props on a job. You can see props on the right hand side of the screen. So we're cutting the ends off, reprocessing them, reflanging them, repainting them, and then they go back out as props. Now the steel can be demonstrated to be fit for purpose, but they also know from the job it did before what job it's capable of doing again. I haven't been directly involved in proofing these. That's been done by the client themselves, but it's very interesting because it's the first time where we're seeing sustainability and circularity being pushed by the clients. This was a job we did ourselves. We took a second-hand frame. It hadn't been used, but it was 8 years old, rusty as hell, and we modified it and turned it into a 12,000 square metre building. I have done the separate case studies on this before. We saved over £1 million, as well as over 1,000 tons of carbon on this job.
Roy, just 1 minute left, please.
Yep, nearly there. So as we ramp up the scale, this is another job. It isn't the correct port. Another very quick point is 2 or 3 of these examples I've given you, we're not allowed to name the job because reused materials have been used and the client doesn't want people to know because they consider that somehow suggests that it might be inferior. It couldn't be used if it were. So very simply, this is concrete coated oilseed pipe that's had the concrete, the plastic, the paint removed through the photos on the left, welded back up and sent out to create a new port, not this particular one, but a new port. The old example we'll have seen before, we actually had 2,000 tons of an Irish gas pipe surplus that would otherwise have been scrap, was turned into the Olympic Stadium or parts of. So very quickly, at the moment, reuse, as far as I'm concerned, is a niche. It's a developing market. Unless you want tubes, then I've got a lot of it. But at the moment, I'm struggling to source sections. COVID hasn't helped. In terms of reuse, you need to be flexible in your design requirements. You might not be able to get what you want. Can you use what you can get? Don't go for all or nothing. So if you can reuse materials in part of the job, that's better than not doing it at all. I know people are now assessing what assets they have in their sites to see if they can reuse them, but don't lose sight of the fact they may be used to somebody else, or you may be able to use them in a different application yourselves. Too much stuff that can't be reused directly is just going through as waste at the moment. And the final point, which is positive for me, is it is already happening. It's really gained momentum even this year with all the other dramas that we've had. So as a practical player in the marketplace, we're really seeing this starting to happen now. There you go, Catherine, that should be me done.
Thank you, Roy. Always great to hear from Roy, practicing what we all preach. We could all learn a thing or two. So please do continue to put your questions in the Q&A for Roy and Andrea. So I'm going to ask Peter to share his screen. He's already got his video on. So I'm looking forward to Peter's slightly different context for reuse in terms of sort of the heritage area, but obviously a lot of reuse happens here. So I'm sure there's a lot of sort of transferable knowledge. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Catherine. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to give you just a very quick whiz through a number of projects, and it's more to do with historic buildings rather, but obviously reuse of materials. Carrig Conservation, we are a science-based materials consultancy and heritage, established 1993. We have 3 divisions, basically: materials analysis and heritage, energy retrofit of heritage buildings, and a research unit that mainly writes policies for state parties. We're headquartered in Dublin. We have an office in London and in Naples, Italy, and we have joint ventures in Melbourne, Australia, and Montreal in Canada, so we work worldwide. This is a church that was actually built in 1715, and it was a place of worship up until about 1975, when the congregation fell and they amalgamated with another church and left it vacant. And in 1986, kids, as they will, lit a fire and the place burnt down. And therefore it was derelict from 86 until 2007. And this is what it looked like. This is the architect, Eric Tynan, and myself. We looked at it and said we could come up with a repurpose or adaptive reuse. You can see the damage that was done. This was the altar and the chancel. This is when we started clearing it out to really see what we had, when we realized there were a full set of vaults beneath. So that kind of changed our thinking. And what we did was we restored the chancel and basically built a building within the building. And this is a completely modern, as you can see, but because of the vaults on the ground, we couldn't put three floors of loading on it. So if you see the trusses, the new trusses that we designed hang the top 2 floors. but all these components are demountable and reusable if anybody wanted to turn this back into a full volume church at any time. And in fact, all the components could be reused in a similar situation somewhere else. We also used some modern energy techniques. We used a hemp lime render or plaster on the inside, and we have geothermal, and we also have solar panels on the roof. So we got this to a B1 energy rating, which is pretty amazing for a 1715 building. This is a view of the outside where we restored, and there were no windows, so we were able to put new windows in, etc., for high performance. St. Mary's Kilkenny, another church, again, more or less abandoned in the 70s as congregations started falling, and it became a community centre and a badminton hall. And then the local authority bought it in 2007-8. And we discovered the north aisle of the church had been demolished in probably the 1850s or thereabouts. And we designed a new building on the footprint of the north aisle. And this is all actually clad in lead. And the reason for that is we wanted to go for a 100-year design life on this building. And it is now the Medieval Mile Museum, which pre-COVID was a very successful tourist visitor centre in the city of Kilkenny. Another church, again, abandoned. It became a wholesale shop. It became a lighting shop. And then Pearse Lyons, who was a local man and had a distillery in America, decided to buy it and convert it. It was in a terrible state. It was painted pink and all sorts of things. And so we restored it into its original form. And it is now a micro distillery and very successful. It's hard to see here, but we rebuilt the spire, but not in stone as it would have been. That's actually a glass spire. And there's LED lighting underneath, which for Valentine's Day goes red, and for Easter goes yellow, and all those sorts of things for a beacon to bring people in. So where possible, historic fabric should be reused. Tearing down lime plaster or taking up floorboards and discarding them is not good. If you use new materials in heritage buildings, they have to be compatible. And where we see too much of incompatible materials going in and stop breathing walls and causing all sorts of health issues and damp and mold, etc. So it is very important to not only reuse material, but also to be compatible materials. And as I say, there are so many mistakes made in the name of energy upgrade. There is much research being carried out on heritage buildings' performance. They perform a lot better than people think. We are in collaboration with the Fraunhofer Institute of Building Physics, and we have a live laboratory in a place called Benedict Boyron. ICOMOS is the International Council of Monuments and Sites, which is the technical advisory body to UNESCO. And we have a scientific committee on energy sustainability and climate change. And I am at the moment, the president of that organization. And carbon is becoming a commodity, and we really have to find better ways of saving carbon. And there's no better way than the reuse of buildings and materials. This is the building in Benedict Boyron in Germany. It's again dating from 1720s. It's an old cooperage. We redeveloped or repurposed it, if you like, into a live laboratory. Some of those external elevations now have a lime plaster, which would have been traditional, but one has aerogel added into it as an insulator, another has hemp, another has cork, and then we have another one with just lime, and we're doing analysis every 15 minutes, recording the performance, the relative humidities, the temperatures, internal moisture, interstitial within the wall. So we have phenomenal information coming out from that. We recently did a very big study for Historic England, and it was called Understanding Carbon in the Built Environment. And this is now part of Historic England's Heritage Counts publication for 2020. But some of the case studies we looked at is, if you do nothing, is the dark blue line. If you refurbish, it's the kind of line, the broken line. And then if you demolish and build a new building to the same volume, the same space, you use a huge amount of carbon in the beginning, and then it will take you 63 years to pay back the carbon of the replacement building. So it makes sense to reuse buildings. And as I said, in St. Luke's Church, design for reuse is important, and we are beginning to get that. The value of waste must be recognized, and it was good to listen to Andrea. And certainly when we did the Historic England study, we found not very accurate information on actually waste, reuse and recycle. We think, and there is a move within Europe to look at tax incentives to be introduced to encourage material reuse. We think there should be carbon fines introduced for demolition instead of talking about carbon taxes, because people don't like the word tax. But if there was a fine, it would change the economic dynamics. And then in carbon incentives for keeping embodied carbon. So if you've got a building, say older than 100 years, there should be a carbon kind of credit for that building. So that's me. I think I did it in quick time. I hope it wasn't too fast, but if you have any questions, please do ask. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. Some lovely buildings there, and I really like the graph that shows the amount of time you need to pay back for new build and demolish. It's nice graph that. Right. If I could ask Roland to share his screen and start his video, that would be great. So just a housekeeping notice, because we're running a bit over time, we've decided to forego the 5-minute break. I hope no one minds too much about that. And just a reminder, we have a Q&A session for probably about 20-25 minutes. So please do put your questions in there so we can have a good discussion. So Roland, over to you if you'd like to start.
Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Roland van Delden. I'm from Holland. So English is not my native language, and I hope you all understand me. Otherwise, send me a chat or whatever. I'm the CEO of LEDX, and at LEDX we are manufacturing circular waterproofing materials out of waste. And I'd like to take you with me on the journey that we have made the last years. Gaat niet naar de volgende.
You may want to put it into presentation mode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Is it going now? Yeah. We have already since 1979 a factory where we are manufacturing bituminous waterproofing materials that are used to waterproof roofs, but especially basements in, let's say, 20 countries covering the world. This is an illustration of the palm in Dubai, where we did a lot of waterproofing works. And in 2013, we learned that the use of fossil raw materials is not allowed by the year 2050. And that means that we have a problem. Then bitumen is not allowed to be used anymore. So we have been thinking and we said, okay, can't we use waste as raw material? And of course, then we go from a linear to a circular economy. And we started to look for an appropriate pile of waste. And we found the waste of PVB. And that is the film that used to be in our car window. I have an example here in my hand, maybe you can see it. If we go to a car glass for a new window, all these windows are being demolished, and everybody loves to have the glass, but nobody loves to have the film, which is laminated within the glass, and it is used to, let's say, keep the stones out of our head. 1.5 billion kilos of that PVB waste are being buried or being burned each year in Europe. And that became our pile of raw materials. It took us 3 years to find the right way to recycle that product and to make, to design, let's say, a new product out of it. But in 2017, we managed and we were able to introduce our first product, and that is called latex flashing. So with waste, we are replacing lead, the poisonous heavy metal lead in the building environment. We introduced the product in 2017 and everybody loves it because it looks exactly like lead. It's very easy to apply. It's not more expensive, it's even cheaper than lead. And of course, made out of waste and recyclable again. I don't have to tell you how hazardous lead is, and that problem is not there with our PVB waste made latex flashing. So we are solving a lot of troubles that lead is giving. And as we look like lead, that is fantastic. In the meantime, we also introduced latex easy, which is a very easy to apply self-adhesive latex material. And we realized that if we will replace all the lead in the world by latex, still 90 to 95% of our huge pile of waste is still available. That's why we had to think bigger. And we said, now we have to, let's say, use our waste in a bigger application. And that's where flat roofing membranes are being developed. And the product is called Latex Roof, and it's introduced November 2020. And that Latex Roof is the world's most sustainable roofing membrane. Of course, it's made out of waste. It has a significant carbon reduction. It's very durable, at least 30 years. And it can be recycled at least 7 times. That means that with the same amount of waste, we can use that waste for over 200 years. The product is white. That means it's reflective and it is reducing the temperature within our building by 5 to 7 degrees. It can be recycled again, and it's applied without heat, without hot air. So yeah, it meets all the requirements that the professional roofer needs. Talking about the sustainability impact, if you look at the CO2 emission during production and installation of our latex roof, we are very proud to tell that we are at least 85% greener than the greenest waterproofing membrane that is available in today's market. And that's not the only thing. Very exciting news is that we are also eating nitrogen. and that can make from all the roofs that we're going to waterproof, yeah, they become a forest, because every square meter of latex roof will consume 7 grams of nitrogen every year, and we can guarantee that nitrogen consumption for at least 7 years. In that way, we are trying to use the waste of today to prevent that global waste is never coming back. That's a very quick presentation. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you, Roland. Really interesting. I've never thought of as a roof as a forest before, so I will do now. And it's just interesting to think about all the windscreens in your cars, and you don't really think about all the what actually happens to some of that. So it's great to seeing it being used at a really high value.
Yeah.
So everyone, please continue to put your questions in the Q&A. So as I said before, we're not going to have a 5-minute break now. So if I could invite Tom to put his video on and start sharing his screen.
Okay. There we go.
Tom is going to talk about the circular lighting service that they've developed. Yeah, we can see your screen, Tom. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine. It's been great to listen to all the other speakers so far as well. I'm hoping to change the way that everyone looks at lighting from a circular perspective. So there's a lot to cover, and obviously I'm not going to be able to go through everything, but if you do have any questions, obviously please put them in the Q&A or contact me afterwards. So we're talking today about circular lighting. Just to briefly introduce myself, I'm a circular design engineer at Egg Lighting, and I'm responsible for developing the remanufacture process, which is my background, and also working with the R&D team. And Egg Lighting, the company that I'm representing, was founded in 2013. Since then, we've kind of picked up a reputation with the Scottish circular economy industry, and we're very fortunate to have been recognised by a number of awards on that front. But we're also very proud to in-house a lot of our operations. So in terms of lighting design, research and development, and electrical installation, means that we've got oversight over a lot of lighting project. So what I'm hoping to make the case for today is that there are 3 key pillars to circular lighting, and that neither one of those can be overlooked. So firstly, preserving asset value, and we believe that luminaires should be installed as high quality, and that allows us to avoid obsolescence through remanufacturing by collecting them and upgrading them at the end of their first lifetime. We also believe very firmly that light sources themselves should be upgradable. And I'll speak more about this as we go on, but we believe that as LED technology continues to improve every year, those benefits should be passed on to our clients. And then finally, controls and sensors. So anyone who has specified lighting recently is well aware that lighting is set to become much more than just illumination, as it's well placed to become a Internet of Things backbone. But again, on this, our belief is that these systems should be modular, they shouldn't be proprietary, and also that they should be improvable via software updates. So just to give a quick statistic about why circular lighting is so important. Now, I can't maybe compare to some of the statistics we've had today already. However, in the UK in 2019, the Environment Agency reports 42,000 tonnes of commercial light fittings were placed onto the market. And that is equivalent to just over 3,000 of these lovely new electric buses that are being rolled out across Scotland in terms of weight. But unfortunately, only 6% of these are actually collected and recycled. And even then, this is recycling. There's almost no penetration of luminaire reuse or remanufacture in the market at the moment. And we're very much hoping that we can change that. But we, as well as talking about material reuse, we have to remain cognizant of the fact that over a product's life cycle, 97% of its environmental impact will be incurred during its use, because obviously lights use a lot of electricity. So herein comes a little bit of the geeky stuff. So people might know about Moore's law. This is the Heights law, which this graph is showing over the last 4 decades. On the red line is the improvement of LED efficiency, and on the blue line, the decrease in LED cost. And there's a number of scientific papers projecting that these process and innovations will continue into the next couple of decades. So what this means for us is that our clients could be seeing this green line. So over the next decade, if their LEDs were following technological improvements, their efficiency would be increasing and they'd be saving huge amounts of their energy bill. However, what is actually the case is that lights are installed and then left. And not only that, but the LEDs dim over their lifetime and maybe become dusty. So their light output actually decreases. And our proposition is that LEDs can be replaced and upgraded periodically. And this creates an additional energy saving. And the benefit of that goes directly to our customers in the form of their energy savings. So unfortunately, the challenge is that since the introduction of LEDs, a lot of lighting manufacturers have taken the misguided approach of integrating the product design very significantly. So this means a greater variety of materials are included in the product. They might be closely bonded. And also they're very hard to separate, and the light source, most critically, is not possible to replace and upgrade. So I'm not going to go through our product range. Obviously, I'd love if you want to view our website or contact me afterwards, but this is an image of one of our upgradable luminaires, the Stroma. So this is for industrial use in a high bay situation, and as you can see, it is designed such that the LED module is easily replaceable as soon as technology advances. So just to summarize, the way that we've decided to offer this to our customers is through a circular lighting service. So we know that within the circular economy, it's very important to have a business model which matches our objectives. So in our circular lighting service, we retain ownership of the lights, and this allows us to specify high quality upgradable luminaires, technical factors which the client might not necessarily be aware of, and the capital expenditure of this is not passed on to the client. And we are then incentivized to remanufacture the luminaire through its lifetime. We also periodically upgrade the LEDs in our customers' lights, and the benefits of that is passed on directly to the customer. We also, I would love to go and talk more about this as well, but our R&D team is in the process of launching our Bluetooth mesh control system, and baked into the design of that is upgradability. So we envisage software updates being made available to customers as we develop them. And finally, for our sector, the warranty of lights has been a huge factor in causing their obsolescence. And the typical warranty for a luminaire is only 5 years, even though a lot of the components in the luminaire are rated for approaching 15 years or even 20. So through our service, we're able to take on 100% of the responsibility for maintenance for as long as the service continues. So just a real world case study to bring this to life. This is one of our long-standing clients in Scotland, WH Malcolm Group. And we were able to, we originally installed their lights in 2016, the Luxion T model. And by 2020, we were able to upgrade the LEDs in their warehouses to the latest Philips LEDs, which is the Luxion TX. And this not only in comparison to replacing the luminaires saved them £40,000 capital cost, but it also saved £8,000 per year on their energy bills. So a lot of our clients are very aware of the benefits of installing LEDs as compared to fluorescents. But what we're demonstrating here is that actually there is a benefit to upgrading LEDs, not just installing them and leaving it at that. And finally, the material reuse that we were able to provide to our clients was almost 2 tons. So the process really that we would go through when we're setting up a service agreement is that firstly, we try to understand the requirements of our customers. So we really do believe that the circular lighting service is the best format. However, it doesn't work as well for all of our customers, and we really like to be flexible. So in some cases, we'll be happy to simply upgrade our clients' luminaires if that's technically feasible. Then obviously we will do a site survey and a lighting assessment, which is free and no obligation. We then look to produce cost and environmental impact projections, and this is really important to make sure that the service is designed in such a way to maximize environmental impact. And we provide ESG reporting and data so that our customers can really shout about the environmental impact that the service makes for them. And then finally, because we've got that team in-house, we're able to carry out the work and install lights with a minimum of fuss, no subcontractors. But in regards to a conventional lighting purchase agreement, this is where things really change, and we'll be periodically offering upgrades to help our clients save money as much as possible and reduce their installed energy use. So as I said before, I'd really love to talk more, whatever your questions are, or you can contact us here. So thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you, Tom. Really interesting. It's so nice to see some sort of circular economy business models that people can actually do. So great to hear. Thanks for the presentation. So could I ask Steve to put his video on, which he's just done, and start sharing his screen? So Steve's going to talk about sort of the space and stuff layer, slightly different perspective because sort of more on the social value and community angle. So over to you, Steve. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, I am not having internet issues, so you are stuck with my video on, unfortunately. So I just want to start off with a few figures, really, just to try and frame the situation, the challenge. So in the UK, 150,000 tons of ceiling tiles are used every year. Of that, 40,000 are metal, 15,000 are gypsum based. So both of those easy to recycle. Not the point, but they're easy to recycle. 95,000 tons a year are mineral based, which are obviously a lot more difficult to recycle. There are recycling schemes out there, but the majority of those will go off for energy from waste potentially. Obviously, there's very little calorific value, and landfill. So the average time a carpet tile is used is 7 to 10 years. The design life is more like 20. And if you have foam back carpet tiles, which I'll talk a little bit about later, really high quality carpet tiles. I mean, we've been dealing with carpet tiles recently that are older than 20 years, and they are immaculate. 22 million items of furniture are discarded each year in the UK. 85% of that is broken up and put into skips, ended up in landfill, ended up in recycling, and ended up in energy recovery. At the same time, funding is under immense pressure for the good causes out there. So for charities, schools, if we consider alone that charities have lost £12.5 billion worth of income since the pandemic started, that's just charities alone, and that figure's out of date. That's an old figure, so that's likely to be a lot more than that. But then we consider that the expenses that our public services have been under, we'll have to start paying that back. Isn't it better that they spend their more money on more important things than buying new building materials, carpet tiles, ceiling tiles, furniture? I don't want to pitch, but I just want to give an idea about what we do. So our role is to match up supply and demand. So supply from corporate, we've looked at the industry, where the gap is that matching up function. Kit surplus kit, surplus materials, surplus furniture coming from corporate environments. And then there's the demand from the good causes. That matching up function in the middle is what we do. We don't need to do the infrastructure. Many contractors already have a good relationship with people who can strip the kit out off site carefully. What we do is match that up, manage the process if need be. We have a national network of haulage, labour, storage, recycling if need be. If the client wants us to take 100% of kit on site, we're interested in reusable kit, but there's recycling out there to deal with the small element that won't be reusable, and that means it becomes more efficient for the client because we're not cherry picking, we're removing everything on site, so it makes it easier for them to commit to our process. I'm not going to go too much into this because we've been talking about the benefits of reuse today already. It's good for the environment, it's good for the community, it's also good for business. Social value reports are generated by what we do, as other people in the industry are too. What I'd like to talk about is some of the actual projects we've worked on. Now, I'm talking about two ISG projects today, one in central Bristol and one in central London. If we look at this first one, this was 200,000, go back to that, 200,000 square foot of office space being stripped out, ready for relet. We took 53,000 items out of there and donated them into the community. That was made up of 30,000 carpet tiles, of which we have another 90. We're just coming to the project, end of the project, to rehome another 90,000 carpet tiles with a different site for the same client. 94 meters of glass partitioning, 92 items of sanitary ware, 58 doors, 157 pallets. I won't go on, but it gives you an idea of the demand that exists out there from the good causes that we work with. There was very limited space on site for skips. We visited very early, as we do with all projects, get in front of the start of projects to get an inventory together. We can then go back. We got back to the client and said, this is the kit we want. This is the kit that we can reuse. Let's work out a way of getting it out safely. We provided roller trolleys for things like carpet tiles, which made the job actually easier and reduced manual handling, because when they came down, they went onto the back of a truck rather than being unloaded into a skip. So potentially saved effort and labour. The kit was loaded onto one of our contractors' vehicles by ASG people, ISG contractors. So that meant that they had the CSCS in place and the vehicle just entered as it would do for a delivery from Tewson's or whoever, keeps the cost down. We worked out on this one that during the strip out stages, they would need a vehicle pretty much every day. Often on some days they would return. We planned that in as much as we could, but obviously some days they were working nights on this site. Some days they would be busier on the night before. Some days they wouldn't be able to strip out what they wanted to strip out. So it's trying to get that flexibility from our contractors to say, look, we know there's going to be a certain amount of kit. If we need to come back that day, fine. If there's not so much kit that day, give us a call and we'll send that contractor somewhere else. The contractor will still get paid, but maybe by picking up another day. It's worth mentioning about transport. We use freight consolidation wherever possible and backhaul to keep the cost down for freight, for transport, and also to keep the carbon down. The kit from this site stayed in the local economy, and we transferred it to a local storage point less than 3 miles away from site. So it got picked up, cleared off site quickly, and then redistributed from a storage point. The beauty of that is charities, good causes, schools, NHS, they're very good at what they do, but they're not very good at collecting on time. And we can't have them on site. We can't have volunteers, 90-year-old volunteers turn up in flip-flops and a Fiesta van to pick up 2,000 carpet tiles. So we need to get it off site quickly. And by getting it to a storage point, it meant that we can redistribute more flexibly within the timescales. A lot of this kit stayed locally, but the demand out there for things is incredible. We're seeing phenomenal demand. Some of these carpet tiles went all the way from Bristol to Barnsley. It went all over the country because the demand is there. Next one I just want to talk about quickly is the Central London site. So this was a speculative fit out. The client came in, ISG's client came in and said, well, we want to put a staircase in. So there's a lot of ceiling tile that we want reused, a lot of ceiling we want reused. So we were able to donate 8 tons of kit, equivalent to about £260,000 worth of in-kind funding into the community, and about 45 tons of CO2 avoided. We scheduled collections. Obviously, this was central London, so it was a bit of a nightmare as far as collections go, but the kit still had to come out. Even if it wasn't being reused, it would still have to come out and go on the back of trucks for recycling. So what we did was mirror that. It just meant that rather than throwing it onto a rubbish truck, it was placed more carefully onto a reuse truck, which then took it away, took it to a distribution point and redistributed from there. The kit from there went off to a variety of projects, including 1,500 square meters for a charity in Norfolk that was refitting a warehouse as a community facility. I think it's important to remember with reuse and with the donations that you've got to keep it simple. It is, at the end of the day, just getting rid of old kit. You need to be realistic. Some kit won't come out, and you need to identify that. You need to go back to the client and say, this, we all want to reuse as much as possible, but this kit won't come out. Manual handling rules have changed since it went in. Someone's built a wall in the way, or it just won't come out. It won't disconnect. Be realistic, because by being truthful like that, you'll raise your profile more, because people will not waste effort. You don't want to waste the client's effort, because they're always weighing up. They're always weighing up whether the extra perceived effort is worth the environmental and cost benefit. Get in front of the project. So we want to see kit. We want to get to site as soon as possible. Get that inventory done of kit coming out before it comes down, because those are the best photos we can get. Obviously, you may lose a bit of kit when it's coming down. It may get damaged, but those are the best photos and the best indication of the quality of kit that you can get. In an ideal world, we want our kit allocated before it leaves site, so we know where it's going. We can tell the story, but also that means we can offset costs. So by getting in front of it, reduces carbon because it can go directly to the good cause that needs it, but it also reduces costs because the good cause will often pay for delivery. Logistics. I spoke about logistics. We use...
Just Steve, 1 minute, thank you.
1 minute. So
yeah.
the last one, not to the last one, we involve site on staff. The people stripping this stuff out, work with these people, report back to these people where the kit's going, because at the end of the day, they've heard it all before. They've taken stuff out carefully and they've seen it ended up going into skips. We report back. We have toolbox talks. We report back with case studies, and we also ask them to nominate good causes which they may know of in the community, their kids' school. So report back, let them know that what they perceive as extra effort is having a benefit for the community. Thank you. That's me. Done.
Thank you, Steve. Much appreciated. Great presentation. Just it's a no-brainer to me, honestly. The amount of stuff that's available through sort of all the fit out cycles. What, you know, I don't see why everyone doesn't use you or someone similar. Right, last but not least is Richard Mehmet. I've known Richard for a long time now. I don't want to say how long because I'm showing my age. But if I can, he's got his video on, so if I can ask him to share his screen. Richard's probably a bit of a pioneer really in terms of the whole sort of social enterprise reuse model. So over to you, Richard. We can see the screen.
Good, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay. Thanks very much for inviting me to this this summit. It's been really interesting to be here. And
Richard, sorry, just to interrupt, you may just want to put it on presentation mode or slideshow.
Okay, sorry, you're absolutely right.
It's all right.
How's that? That's more
good,
like
thank you.
Cool. Yeah, as I say, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for giving me the graveyard shift, Catherine. That's really good of you, but I still see we've got quite a lot of delegates here, which is really great. And really thanks for the opportunity to speak, because reuse is very close to my heart, as I've been intimately involved with reuse for more than 22 years now. I've tried to keep to speaker guidelines. Okay, I've got 14 slides and not 10, but I'll definitely not be speaking for more than 10 minutes. So, hello everybody, I'm Richard Mehmed. I'm the Managing Director of Community Wood Recycling, and we are a network of social enterprises. I'm sure you all know what a social enterprise is, and our aims are to save resources, and our particular resource is in the name, is wood, but equally we want to create jobs, training and volunteering opportunities for disadvantaged people. I've kind of boiled down the most important features of our model, and that is we've been going since 1998. So we've got longevity in our model. Something must be working anyway. And the other important thing is that we are completely financially self-supporting. So although we're really committed to delivering as high quality environmental and social outcomes as we possibly can, we've done that in a financially sustainable way. So how do we do it? Well, look, to get hold of this lovely timber that we're interested in saving, we provide a wood waste collection service to primarily, but not exclusively, the construction sector. So rather than putting wood in a skip, we collect it. Now, we don't collect it by tugging on their heartstrings. We provide a cost-effective and efficient alternative to our clients putting their wood in a wood skip. So they've got, we charge a little bit less, so they've got the financial incentive to use our service. We collect in these 3.5 ton pickups that you can see in front of you. We don't leave skips, and we take it back to our premises and we sort it out. Anything that's reusable, like for example, these long lengths, are sold back to the community for their DIY and building projects, thereby locking in that lovely carbon. It's not just the long lengths, it's also the sheet materials. This always makes me smile or cry, I'm not sure which one, because this is waste that we picked up. And to me, it looks like brand new sheet materials. And of course, that you imagine the carbon gain, the saving in the milling costs and impact, the transportation from Malaysia or wherever the hardwood plywood comes from, the distribution in this country. Think of all the carbon that we are saving. So we are not only collectors of waste wood, we are timber merchants as well. Now, the wood that we can't use for selling back for DIY, we make into a wide range of products. And I just thought of this shot as it might sort of encapsulate the kind of wide range of things that we make. So we've got everything from small items, coat racks, spice racks, through to what I think is high quality furniture, and we even install kitchens as well. That's what we do with the wood. Anything we can't use for DIY or for making into products, we then turn into firewood and kindling for sale at this time of year, or we pass it on for chipping and it gets used in biomass. And that's the very, very last option. Now, as I said before, we also want to create work, and our model is very labour intensive. So repurposing all the wood that we have can be done by our trainees, by our placements, and even when they get jobs with us, which is very often paid employees. And that creates the kind of lower skilled but highly worthwhile work that people who are marginalised often need to start their way back into the labour market. It's not only through the manufacture of products, but throughout our business model, we create opportunities for disadvantaged people. And of course, we're right at the heart of the circular economy. And I think this slide for me really represents it very well, because everything you can see here, apart from perhaps the dado rail there on the far right of your screen, everything there has been made from waste. What we've done, it wasn't me, but the very, very talented carpenters that have made this have just brought in the metal legs, and everything you can see there is created from waste wood. And I think that's a brilliant example of encapsulating how we are part of the circular economy, really. Of course, even our collection model has distinct advantages from rather than leaving a skip on site that gets collected in a 16-ton skip lorry with a 6-litre engine that obviously uses a lot of fuel and belches out a lot of pollution. Our collections are done in these trucks, which are 2.5 litre, even these days 2 litre transit size pickups. So obviously using a lot less fuel, belching out a lot less pollution and having a lot lower impact on the roads. And of course, this thing, if it's an 8-yard skip, it's taking 8 yards of a resource, and we are taking 12 yards. So you can see even the collection methodology is all about saving carbon as well. If I just move that onto there. So really what you've got is you've got an alternative. Wood that isn't collected by community wood recycling ends up in the skip, and we know that really the only linear destination for that skip is to a waste transfer station, then to a chipper and get burnt for biomass. Better than landfill, but obviously has a carbon footprint itself. Or unfortunately, there is still quite a significant amount of timber still ending up at landfill. So you can either have this or you can have that, really. The choice is ours as a society to make, really. So what sort of impact are we having? Well, we over the last, since 1998, 22 years or whatever it is now, have grown into the largest social franchise network in the UK. It's all not for profit, it's all charitable, and all our enterprises, there's now 30 of them up and down the country, are all focused on delivering the circular economy on a daily basis, saving carbon, reusing resources, providing sources of cheap timber to our communities, and obviously trying to be as big a part of the solution as possible.
Richard, 1 minute, thank you.
Thank you. Just summing up, really, you can see over this is our last full year. We rescued over 23,000 tonnes of wood with a saving of 11,500 tonnes of carbon. And we hope now to set up more enterprises in the UK, but we also want to spread to Europe and beyond, and play an even bigger part in moving towards a more sustainable society. Thank you very much indeed for listening, and I wish you all the very, very best for Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Much appreciated. So I sometimes go into my local community wood recycling shop. It's in Northampton. It's just a great place. They're doing gift vouchers. I think some of them are doing gift vouchers for Christmas. So just what a nice gift to have. Some wood that you can do whatever you want with. Right, if I could ask all the presenters to put on the videos, that would be great. So we have about 20 minutes, just under 20 minutes for Q&A. Roland, do you want to put on your video? Roy's left. Doesn't want any questions. And I was just saying, Roy's back. He's ready. So I know quite a lot have been answered already. So thank you for the presenters for that. Really great presentations and quite a wide spectrum of the different elements of reuse, which I think is really nice to see. So I've got one question. I think Rosie asked a question. Rosie, are you okay to ask out loud your question?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I've put a long preamble to my question, which I'm sure everyone can read if they want to. But just at the moment, we've got potentially a lot of empty retail space in town centres throughout the UK, which is, you know, a potentially much bigger problem ahead of us, as it even has been in the past few years. And it seems like at the kind of macro scale, we need to be finding ways to reuse property, you know, the whole building, rather than having to resort to demolition. So, you know, really it's a question to the panel as to how we can work towards reusing high street and retail park, retail terrace property, which could be historic, could have a lifespan of 20 to 40 years because it's you know, a developer-led retail scheme. How can we deal with the amount of demolition that could lead to change that property, or what should we be doing to try and get it reused?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of what interventions are needed, isn't it, to make sure that reuse is considered above demolition. Who wants to start on that one? Andrea's got her hand up.
Yeah, it's a great and really interesting question to start with. Something that we've started to explore, particularly in out-of-town retail. So one of the studies that we're doing as part of the project that's underway now is looking at an out-of-town retail, what do you call them, shed, and seeing how compatible that is for other uses. So could it be a sports centre? Could it be a school? Could it be a library? Could it be used for healthcare? And identifying what the possibilities and what the limitations are for that kind of structure. So that's kind of one way that we're kind of looking at that. But on the slightly more negative side is the other thing that we found already, that is one of the reasons why our case study building is being removed rather than being changed, is because they want to build a lot more houses on the site, and that is the same pressure that's happening across the country. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to relieve the pressure on brownfield sites to have a big intensification for housing. And positive and a negative there for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea, for that. I guess it's, you know, we do need a lot of housing, so whether some of this building is adaptable and convertible remains to be seen. Would anyone else like to respond to Rose's question?
Yeah.
Go, Richard.
Well, greater minds than mine have been thinking about the whole issue of how we repurpose town centres. But I think in this country, we've got a higher proportion of shops, a higher volume of shops per capita than other European countries. So I think we're going to have to get rid of a lot of the retail space and turn it into housing. And the remainder, I'd like to see our town centres full of more speciality shops, owner-occupied shops. Living in Brighton, there's a whole area called the North Lanes that some of you might have come across, where every shop is owner-occupied and operated, and you can buy all manner of lovely things there. And I think to be a draw again, I think the high street needs to get rid of the chains and stick to things that are perhaps not so easy to buy online, and become more leisure destinations again, really. That will need a lot of repurposing, that will need a lot of changes. And I'd also like to see a lot more people encouraged to live near town centres. So maybe some building residential units so that those people right on their doorstep are going to be encouraged to get into town and use the coffee shops, and maybe we can see an increase in greengrocers and specialist meat shops or bakers or whatever, really. So that's my solution.
Thanks, Richard. Peter, would you like to come in?
Yeah, just to say that the Irish government has recently introduced incentives for what's called town centres first, and it's to try and regenerate some of our towns and villages because of I suppose what happened was the out-of-town shopping malls and things took the smaller shops business, and but I think we need to get more people, as Richard just said, more people living in our town centres, in our city centres, and convert some of these buildings. The other scheme the Irish government introduced a couple of years ago was called living over the shop, so that 2 or 3 story buildings were allowed to be developed into apartments to get people living. And if there's people living, then they need the convenience stores, the cafes, etc. So it kind of self-generates, if you like.
Thanks for that. I think probably from a sort of a more of a data point of view, and I know Circuit's looking into this a bit, we need to present the evidence to the local authorities and sort of address it through their climate emergency, really, in terms of, what is all the embodied carbon in the structure that is already there versus, knocking it down, rebuilding it, rebuilding new. And I think we need to present some of the arguments in that way. Right, we have a question from Jenny, I think. Jenny, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi, that was amazing timing. My veg box just got delivered. I skidded out. Just made it back to the chair. I've asked this of Steve before, actually, and I thought I'd raise it to the group to see if anyone had any other experience or knowledge around it. So I'm working with a new modular house project at the moment, and we're working kind of self-build principles, but in an MMC offsite production fashion, and it's modular volumetric. And we're looking to interact a lot with, I guess, new reuse models and existing systems, so salvage yards, demolition firms. And one of the particular items that we thought would be good, because we're also looking to simplify the build process, and so to have surface mounted services, etc. And galvanized conduit was one of the things that came up, and looking at how we actually start accessing those systems, how we create a kind of system of engagement with demolition firms, other kind of reuse organizations. As I say, I've done a little bit of work with Steve before and kind of had these conversations about just kind of the process of how you how you go about kind of creating those wish lists of items, and then also for us not falling behind in our build schedule when we kind of like set our hearts on having this kind of surface mounted reclaimed materials, and then get kind of I guess like fairly negative feedback from not in the way that they don't want to help out, but certainly with some of the demolition firms it's just, no, we don't do that, or no, we can't. It's actually, how do you create a better dialogue around it, and going, actually, okay, what are the issues with getting hold of it? How do we make us more prominent in your mind when you start off on these jobs? And then how do we demonstrate it to other people so that more people are asking, and then there becomes a bit of a system change around the approach to, staged demolition and things.
Thanks, Jenny. I think it's the old question, isn't it, of how we've heard lots of great examples. It's how we really sort of scale it up and mainstream it all. I'm sure lots of people want to respond on this one. Who would like to go first? I'll let Tom go first.
Yeah, that's really fantastic question. I can't speak for galvanized conduit, but I think we've got a similar challenge with lighting, in that a lot of our customers don't understand the value of their products once they've exceeded their warranty, or their building is changing in some way. They're having an internal layout change, whatever it may be. Too much light is ending up in a scrap heap, and for us, it's a massive challenge to make customers or almost asset holders, if you like, aware of the environmental and economic value of the assets that they have. So really, that's just come about through very persistent dialogue, sending lots of documents, sort of recognizing the value of those products. And similarly, in a different way, we're actively trying to engage with sort of architectural salvage groups or demolitions, but I think it is a slow process, and people throughout the supply chain need to have their confidence built and we certainly don't have a magic wand for making that happen. But if, as producers, we're able to very confidently say we are able to remanufacture this, we're interested, I think that does go a long way.
Thanks, Tom. I think Roy wants to come in quickly.
Yeah, it was just to almost reiterate some of what Thomas said there. One of the biggest problems is that it's a strange market model for people to decide they want something and go all the way back to source. And I'm not criticizing that, because initiative is crucial for all of this to develop. But in almost every other nature of this kind of transaction, that's not how the marketplace works. So trying to persuade a demolition guy to spend time filching the galvanized ducting out of a building is going to be fairly tricky. But if somebody else recognizes the value in it, then they may source it pre-demolition or similarly. I mean, I've found the demolition guys to be relatively, more than relatively unreceptive. They've costed a job, they've got it all worked out, how they're going to get it down and pay for it. And they've got the cash revenue side of it all sorted out. I mean, I was interested talking to Richard. I'm sitting on an industrial estate that's 40 odd years old. Next to us, 40 years ago, was a guy who used to reclaim timber from all over the place, reprocess it and sell it. If you go back 20 or 30 years, that stopped being a viable business model at that time. But the real thing for me is that, and again, what Tom's already said it's going to be a slow burn to develop, because there's a lot of products as well that require the warranty, require a technical assessment before you know you can reuse them again. Now, you can reuse them again 100%, but it requires intermediaries, it requires people with the specialist knowledge to be able to solve the problems. If you take the simplest analysis of the ducting, people can't just go in and start taking ducting or conduit out of a building that's going to be demolished. It has to be done in a particular way or a particular fashion. So there's quite a lot of change that has to come, but it's the demand that will lead it, because wherever there's a commercial opportunity, believe me, somebody is going to see a way of fulfilling it. And unfortunately, I think that it will come at a price, which isn't to say that reuse will be more expensive, but buying reused product may be more expensive than buying it direct, because the other problem is availability. Your problem would be solved if somebody was already stocking conduit for reuse in the way that I stock pipe for resale, or Tom's doing lighting for resale in that respect. And that's the business model that works. This paired supply and demand, I'm sorry to everybody when I say this, is very popular academically, but I actually can't think of how it gets done anywhere else. If you want a new car, you don't put an advert out saying, has anybody got a 2001 Rover? Let me know when it comes up, please. And to be blunt, I think there's good reason for that. Apologies.
That's okay. Just I don't know if Steve wants to say something, because he's at the sort of the sharp end of all this, really.
Yeah, so but first of all, to address your point, Jenny, and to follow on from what Roy was saying, it's metal. Demolition companies love the metal because they normally price it. And yeah, it's a struggle. If it was plastic conduit, then maybe you have more of a chance, because it's maybe easier to come out, and obviously they see that as something that's going to end up going to landfill or be shredded.
Yeah.
With yours, Roy, obviously that's what our business is based on. We capture the demand and we fulfill that demand with supply. So I think the major difference is maybe not a Rover, because maybe they're a particular interest, but if it was a second-hand car, yeah, it probably wouldn't work like that, because the second-hand car is perceived to have a lot of value. No one would throw away a car, but people would throw away old furniture, because although there is a perceived economic value to it, in reality there isn't. You can't get rid of 600 desks. Let's talk about office furniture, for example. You can't get rid of 600 desks that easily to reuse, because you'll get people coming in and saying, I'll take 50%, or I'll take that over there. You get the tire kickers coming in, second-hand salespeople. But there is a social and environmental benefit, and there's massive demand out there from good causes that will take this stuff. So there is a demand. That model does work for certain items or certain streams, but I think it probably is for streams which don't have a perceived economic value.
And I think, Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? I think there's different reuse business models, if you like, depending on the material and the value of that material and you know, the quality of it. Yeah, definitely. So I'm just aware that we've got 5 minutes. There's a few questions that have come up. There's one from Ben Cartwright, which I can ask, as how could data be used to support product reuse, or how could it be used better? So we always, whenever we do a circular economy event, we always talk about data to some extent, or the lack of it, or it's not in the right format. I don't know if anyone's got any quick bright ideas how we can make that whole sort of data piece work for reuse a bit better. Anyone want to start on that? Tom?
I'll be very brief. So we've got an Innovate UK project specifically looking at data to encourage reuse of luminaires. So it's something we're very excited about. We really see it as an enabler. The key thing for us is about de-risking the process. So when we receive a luminaire back, we don't know how long it's been used for. It could be 5 years old, it could be a decade old. We don't know what components are in it. We don't know what its performance is. So this creates a huge amount of risk in the process. And we also need, we've been talking about supply and demand. So we need to guarantee that there's going to be a market for that product. So for us, having that data on an individual asset basis, but also on an aggregate basis, it helps with the reverse logistics. It helps with us planning the process for costing it. And it also helps us determine, so when we buy back assets from which are currently installed, it helps us set a fair price.
Great. It would be fantastic if you could share some of the results of that project when you're available. Richard, there was a similar question for you actually about how do you collect data? How do you sort of use the waste data, if you like?
Okay. Yeah, I think I want to encourage people to get moving and get motivated to deliver some outcomes at the sharp end. And I think for me, the use of data revolved around, I knew there was a lot of wood out there that was being wasted, and I guessed that a lot of it was going to be reusable. And that was pretty much the only data I needed to actually get going on the project 22 years ago. I would say don't be bogged down by data, but obviously if you're selling a service, then good data to your clients is important. So I think for our business, the most important data is the data that we produce for our clients on actually what happens to their wood waste, so they can see the carbon, the environmental and the social outcomes that working with us gives them, really. So I'd say data is important, but don't be put off or bogged down with data. Yeah,
I agree with you. We don't, just because we haven't got all the data, we don't want to stop doing it, do we? If we wait for all the data, nothing will ever happen. So I'm just going to, unfortunately, we haven't really got that much more time to do the Q&A. People have put in lots of questions, some of which we've answered, some that still need to be answered. So what we'll do is we'll send the Q&A round to the panelists afterwards, and hopefully they can fill that out, and then we're happy to send the filled out Q&A to all the delegates, because I think there's quite a lot of interesting points that have been raised. We have one final poll where I just want to take the liberty of putting up. So Richard's done that already. So this is to help us, ASBP, decide what we do in the future. So please do choose which activities you think would be most helpful in terms of supporting reuse from your viewpoint. Okay, are we nearly, do I need to do a countdown, Richard?
Give it 15 more seconds, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that should do it.
Okay, Thank you everyone who participated. Also, there's quite database lists came up. That's quite interesting actually. I know Circuit are looking at doing that from a London perspective, but people are always interested in knowing what what is out there, and so webinars, knowledge sharing, project profiles, case studies. Thanks for that. It definitely gives us something to work on going forward. So we've reached 3 o'clock. I would just like to say thank you to all the presenters. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure the audience has as well. Sorry we can do a bit more on Q&A. We've recorded the event, so we will have it up on our website, won't we, Richard, in a few days? In a week? I don't know.
Yes. Sorry again about the techie issues.
Yeah, we apologise for the technical issues. We've done lots of Zoom events before, but this time something wasn't working in our favour. Do have a look at our website. We have got lots of information on. If you want to know more about ASBP, just come and contact one of us. Come and see some of. It'd be lovely to see you at some of our future events as well. So I would just like to say thank you to everyone. Go forward and reuse.